Hello, BookTube, and I'm holding here a nice looking volume of essays called Garden Craft in the Bible and Other Essays by Eleanour Sinclair Rohde. She lived from 1881 to 1950. She was gardener, garden designer, and garden writer. And she wrote from the late 20s to 1950, a couple dozen books. And this one here is a collection of essays, mostly to do with gardens. And this was published by Herbert Jenkins Limited in 1927. And I'm going to read a little essay here called Old Bee Books. You see, books related as well. It starts out with a poem or a stanza of a poem by George Wither, 1588 to 1667. And the lines go, Great God Almighty in the pretty bee, mine eye, as written in small letters, sees an abstract of the wisdom, power, and love, which is imprinted on the heavens above, in larger volumes for their eyes to see, that in such little prints beholds not thee, and in the workmanship, O Lord, of thine, I praise thy wisdom and thy power divine. The essay. Most bee lovers will agree that the charm of old bee books is largely owing to their romantic flavor and the picturesque classical and medieval beliefs therein contained about the wise little creatures we are still so far from understanding. Until well nigh the close of the 17th century, the masterpieces of those great bee lovers, Aristotle, Virgil, and Pliny, were studied as practical handbooks, and the exquisite poetic fancies of the older Grecian writers, which enriched the fourth book of the Georgics, were accepted without question by their old bee masters. But the greatest charm of the Elizabethan and Stuart books is surely the love of bees, which shines through their pages, and the writer's delight in the mystery and glamour of one of the most ancient crafts under the sun. The rarest of old English bee books is Hyles' slender little volume, A Profitable Instruction of the Perfect Ordering of Bees, which was first published in 1572 with The Profitable Art of Gardening. It was published separately in 1579, and in this form is a very rare book. Edmund Southern's treatise concerning the right use and ordering of bees, 1594, is almost equally rare and a far more interesting book in that it is an original work, whereas Hyles is mainly a compilation from the classical writers. The most fascinating of the early bee books, however, is undoubtedly Charles Butler's Feminine Monarch, or a treatise concerning bees and the due order of them, wherein the truth found out by experience and diligent observation discovereth the idle and fond concepts which may have written amidst this subject. 1609. Charles Butler was, I believe, the first person in England to be afflicted with the craze for simplified spelling, and one edition of his book is written in the curious orthography which he adopted, or rather invented. The printer's feelings on the subject are thinly disguised in the prefatory note, in which, ridding himself, as it were, of all responsibility for such amazing spelling, he refers anyone who wishes to understand it to the author's treatise on grammar. History does not relate whether Henrietta Maria was an enthusiast on the subject of the new spelling, but Butler dedicated the edition so written to her, and this dedicatory letter does not appear in any of the other editions. An interesting feature of the book is the bee music associated with the after swarms. The author gravely sets forth the notes, which strikes one as a typical 17th century conceit. And in the 1623 edition, this Bees madrigal is expanded into 4 pages of music with the words. Butler naively avows he cannot vouch for its accuracy because, in a confused noise which the buzzing bees in the busy time of their departing do make, my dull hearing could not perfectly apprehend it, so that I was fain to make up that as I could. The old bee masters differed greatly on the merits of the picturesque custom of ringing bees. Southern says when the swarm is up, it is not good to ring them, or some do, nay, it is common thing where there is no experience to keep a stir and lay on either with the basin kettle or frying pan taking, as the common proverb is, great pains and have little thanks, for by such means they make the bees angry and go forth to settle than otherwise they would. Samuel Purchas, rector of Sutton in Essex, and author of that quaint little volume, A Theatre of Political Flying Insects, also condemns the custom. Both Purchas and Butler quote the ancient law of Christendom, whereas bee owners are whereby bee owners are allowed to pursue their bees when they swarmed, whether they want. This benefit there is of ringing, says Purchas, that if you have neighbors near you that keep bees, you may give notice thereby to prevent wrangling if some of theirs should rise at the same time. But if they will not be stayed but hastening on still, go beyond your bounds to the ancient law of Christendom, permitteth you to pursue them whatsoever, but our common law is more uncivil and yields no such privilege. For if your bees be out of your ground, your property is lost, if you be not more courteous. And all the bees are BEE. Although it was universally acknowledged that the single large bee was the absolute ruler of the hive, writers of the 16th and 17th centuries were curiously divided as to the sex of the ruling bee. Indeed, it seems plausible that the sex of the ruling bee was described as male or female according to the sex of the reigning English sovereign. Rushton, who was bee master to Charles II, speaks of the king bee, but Warder, who wrote in the reign of Queen Anne, describes the ruling bee as a queen and delivers himself of his patriotic outburst. Oh, that all the thousands of the Britannic Israel were but so loyal to our most gracious Queen Anne. Where is your bestowed loyalty, that the very insect of your country shall reprove you? A curious dissertation on the subject of feminine monarchy is to be found in Richard Raymond's Discourse or History of Bees, 1637, in the chapter entitled Bees and Women Compared. He raises the question whether it is lawful for a woman to govern, and supports his arguments in favor of women rulers by citing Deborah, the Queen of Sheba, Candace of Ethiopia, and others. We even discourse now far. He even discusses. Let me try that again. He even discusses now how far it is advisable to allow a woman to govern in a household. Now, they've got the word now, which I think that was the stumbling block. I think it's a spelling mistake. It should be how. Let me answer to dish or to our English morrow. Ill thrives that happens family that shows a cock that's silent and hen that crows. I know not which live more unnatural lives, obeying husbands or commanding wives. But on the whole range of bee literature, surely the most fascinating book is the dainty little play, The Parliament of Bees, with their proper characters, or The Beehive Journalist with 12 honeycombs, as pleasant as profitable, by John Day, 1641. All the characters, with the exception of Oberon, are bees. The sweetness of fancy is exquisite, and throughout one seems to hear the light beat of tiny wings. There is no record to show whether the Parliament of Bees was ever been performed, and it is so delicate, or delicate, that perhaps it is possible. Has ever a parliament been opened with so captivating a speech as that in which Prolix, the master bee, proclaims that the freedom of the flowering meads, gardens, and orchards is his by royal right, and confirmed by none less than Oberon himself? And a long quotation here. To us who warranted by Oberon's love, right ourself master bee, both field and grove, garden and orchard, lawns and flowery meads, where though amorous wind plays with the golden heads of wanted cowslips, daisies in their prime, sun-loving marigolds, the blossom time, and the blow veins violets, and the damask rose, the satily lily, mistress of all clothes, are allowed and given by Oberon's free ardor, pasture for me and all my swarms to feed. But I think the most charming scene of all is the last. Oberon with his train makes a royal progress and finally holds a court of Star Chamber. One after the other, the bees fly up to his throne and present their offerings in the daintiest language. Flora, who describes herself as Oberon's gardener, surely this is the first appearance of a lady gardener on the stage, arrives with nosegay plucked from the bosom of the spring, which Oberon accepts, and with truly royal graciousness replies, "Honeydews refresh thy meads, cowslips spring with golden heads, July flowers and carnations wear, leaves double streaked with maiden hair, may thy lilies taller grow, thy violets further sweetness owe, and last of all may Phoebus love to kiss thee and frequent thy grove, as though in service true shalt unto our groweth and royalty." And yeah, that ends the bee books, old bee books, by Eleanour Sinclair Rohde. A really nice edition. I do like the paper labels on the spines. There's nothing on the front. It would have had a dust jacket, but the dust jacket is long gone. And there's a little catalog in the back here. A Garden of Herbs by Eleanor Sinclair Rohde. And then they go to the Fireside Library. More garden books. The Today Library, Books for Nature Lovers, and the Collector Series. See you next time, BookTube.